We are now doing the French turn for Axis and Allies 1914. This is still round one, and this is overall the overview for France. France has a total of 24 IPCs. They are an allied power. They are next to England. England very often can shuffle troops to France to fend off the Germans, who very often invade them during this game. The German player very often invades France or invades Russia. They very often have to choose which way to go. Historically, the Germans did invade France and overwhelmed the French soldiers. Germany in this game has a better economy, stronger economy of 35 IPCs, the best economy in the game, compared to France's 24. France is not only outmanned, it is also, out-resourced. France must find ways to deal with the German troops that very often come its way. One way they can do this is if they use their colonial troops in the Mediterranean, or activate allied countries, or, better yet, hold off until the United States gets involved on turn 3. There are many ways you can go about this, believe it or not. Paris is the capital. Paris. And the good thing about France is that whenever it is invaded, the supply lines from Paris are not far off. If Germany invades Lorraine, this territory, France can draft nothing but infantry and just send it 1, 2 to the front line. And they can just hold their ground in a defensive position with a defensive advantage to stave off the German attack. Time is working against the Central Powers. So the more time that France has, the better that their odds are. The more time that the Allies have, the better that their odds are. Very often, if France is being invaded, that means Russia can simply launch an offensive against the Germans and hopefully overwhelm the Germans enough to the point where Germany has to send a full stack of troops, or some of their troops, to the east and take pressure off the French. Also, if Germany invades France here in Lorraine, or invades Belgium like they did historically, Germany will be outside of its supply lines. 1, 2. Germany will not be able to get their troops into France until the next round. Very often, that is detrimental to the Germans and advantageous for the French. Let's go on ahead and step back into the game real quick. France. They only have 6 soldiers and 2 artillery units in each of their armies. This is normal. This is the average army. But we all know that Germany has larger than average armies. We don't want to have this war on our territory. The longer that we have, the more that we have Germans invading our territory is the less IPCs we have. If they invade Picardy and Picardy ends up being contested, we don't collect these 2 IPCs. If they invade Picardy or Lorraine, that is a swath of France losing 4 IPCs. And if we don't kick them out, then that means we lose. Well, that just becomes more disadvantageous for us. Despite the supply line, Germany has invaded Belgium. It is a fat stack of troops. We should attack Belgium. But if we attack Belgium, the Germans are likely to take out more of our troops than we are theirs. Along with the factor that, well, we are outnumbered also, so it makes no sense for us to attack. So do we just sit by and let Germany come to our soil? Well, we might just have to. Also, there is a fat stack of troops here in Alsace. Which army do we attack, or which army do we defend against? Germany threatens us on two different fronts, two different territories. So we have to somehow force the Germans' hands. I recommend no offensive actions. I recommend just reactionary movements. Let's go on with the buying phase. The French soldier. Valiant and brave, huh? Valiant and brave. France only has 24 IPCs. Let's purchase 6 infantry. 6 infantry costs 18 IPCs. 24 minus 18 IPCs is 6. 6 IPCs left. Let's buy a plane. I want to buy a plane because if I buy a plane, that will be 2 planes. And we will have complete air superiority over the Germans. Planes give artillery a bonus of 1. So instead of hitting on a 3, artillery can hit on a 4. That is a really good defensive advantage. And if Germany decides to buy another plane and they send it to the west, well, we will still have aerial superiority. We'll have 2 planes. Our planes will fight it out, and we will most likely win because we have more planes. And once we take down their planes, we will control the skies, and we will have supreme artillery support and oversight on the battlefield. So that is what I want to purchase for France. Now, next up, the combat move phase. No, we're not doing combat moves. We are simply going to strategically place our troops so the Germans, and make things more difficult for the Germans. We have purchased our troops accordingly. So I want to move these troops from Burgundy into Lorraine. I want to move these troops from Paris. 1, 2. To Lorraine. I want to move all artillery units to Lorraine, along with the plane for oversight and dominating, aerial supremacy. I also want to take these troops and move them to the front line. I think since this transport is taking off from a harbor, instead of moving 2, it moves 3. So 1, 2, 3. Let's take these 2 troops and move them to Marseille. On the way there, let's take this French soldier in Morocco and 1, 2. Next turn, we'll take German Togoland, and if the Germans try to flee west, we can stop them. Since Germany invaded Angola, which is a Portuguese colony, the Portuguese have entered the war. So, let's take these 2 transports in the Mediterranean. Since they are taking off from a port, that's 3 movement. 2 transports, meaning a total of 4 troops can be grabbed. 1, pick up the troops. 2, 3. Drop off these troops in Picardy. Drop them off. We don't want to leave our Navy unprotected. So, let's take this cruiser, move it up with the transports, and take this cruiser and also move it up with the transports. If German submarines want to attack these transports, they have to deal with the sea mines that are here. But they already look a little preoccupied right now. We should move these 6 troops into Lorraine, along with this artillery piece. No. This artillery piece. So basically move Picardy over to Burgundy. And any troops straggling behind can hold Picardy with a ragtag. Yeah. Picardy is now a cardboard force, pretty much. But the majority of the French army is in Lorraine. Maybe we can get the Germans to attack Picardy. And then, once the Germans attack Picardy, we can crush them. Because their army will have split. If the Germans move into Picardy, their army will have been split. We will divide the German army and conquer it. I highly doubt the German army will be bold enough to attack from Munich into Lorraine. That is a massive force of troops. We are simply reacting and deploying our troops like this to match the Germans. We have already purchased our troops accordingly. Let's just place our troops. France has not conquered any territories, so it stays at 24 IPCs. We will now wait for the German onslaught next round. That is one way for France to deal with its issues, more like make up for its lack of resources and lack of manpower. France must do everything it can to survive, and so must Russia and Italy. I don't think the UK really has much of a problem with surviving, but that is the French faction overview and an example of how the French player should do its turn. Move all of its troops to Lorraine, and all of its allies and leftover troops move to Picardy. Always remember to sharpen your blade in Africa. Cut off the Germans, cut off their route of escape, and take as much German territory as possible. Do everything you possibly can, to weaken your enemy and strengthen your position. On to the British.